Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new edition of Pod by the BAE. It's our week one. We finally made it. Recap slash preview. I'm your host, Nathan Bond, joined alongside Seth Varnadore, Robert Steeg. Guys, after what seemed like 9 tediously long months, we actually have some real life football to discuss. The South Florida Bulls went up to Bowling Green, Kentucky, and for about 3.5 quarters, were playing well enough to win the game, but they fall 41-24 in a very deceptive final score there against the Hilltoppers of Western Kentucky. Seth, I'll ask you this, and we'll kind of dig deeper into it. First blush, what was your initial kind of reaction to the Bulls' loss on Saturday to Western Kentucky?
Well, it sounds weird to say when the other team scores 41 points, but I was really excited or really pleased with how the defense played. Um, and we'll get into that. We've got some kind of more advanced numbers, and we'll talk through that kind of on the Ponderosa. But I thought the defense played well. They made it tough on a really good offense, and you just can't. You're not going to win games turning the ball over when they did and where they did. You just take too many, and there was other just missed opportunities and stuff that will show on the film room. But man, they had some chances to put up some more points, couldn't take advantage, and that's what happens. They're still, these guys have not won a lot of games, so they're still learning how to win, how to finish. They played really well and just couldn't quite finish it. But this is one of the better teams you're going to play this year, I think, right? Just based on preseason stuff, this is probably the Conference USA champ, a team that's got a really good chance to win 10-plus games, likely. And you played them pretty well, and I think there's some – I'm trying to find it. There's some post-game win expectancy numbers that had USF as should have won the game at like 56% post-game win expectancy. So that's pretty good against a team that you were a pretty big underdog to.
I'll send that to Alex. There you go. Yeah, I mean, it's same boat kind of thing. I mean, I kind of said this in jest, but I was also kind of serious. I really didn't care what the final score was after like the first quarter, because I kind of more or less wanted to see how the team was prepared and how the team reacted to like the first couple of punches. Knowing what we know about Western Kentucky, that team is a lot more set up for success long term. They're able to kind of roll with the punches a little bit more. They've been punched in the mouth a few times, and they're able to kind of make themselves back up. But for a brand new team, brand new coach, a quarterback going out there on his third career start. I think Byram third. Yeah, I think that first quarter summarized it perfectly. I think the team was like the yardage was like 262 yards by USF to like 60 by Kentucky. Like that would have never, you couldn't have put that on a bingo card and I would have gotten that USF was able to outgain an opponent by that much and limit a really, really dangerous quarterback that severely. And I mean, the defensive backs were flying around. The linebackers were playing well. The defensive linemen were getting into the backfield every once in a while, but that Western Kentucky offense is hard to penetrate. So to me, I stopped caring after the first quarter because I was like, oh, they're well coached. Perfect. That's all I need to know. Everything else is just going to be kind of fluff and filler at this point from the rest of the game.
Yeah, and if you see kind of what we're sharing here, this is CFB numbers. I think at CFB numbers on Twitter, and his post game win expectancy as USF as a 56.6. I don't think he includes. I'm not sure if penalties are included in this.
No, it doesn't include penalties.
You can see that was, I thought, the big killer for a lot of the game was, especially it's a killer of tempo too, because they're built to. I saw some complaints about the run up the middle. The offense is built to empty the box out, light boxes, run on light boxes, and when they add people to stop the run, you hit huge passes. So they're still built as kind of, and you see the success rate was pretty good, 40.4%, but it wasn't as good as when the offense is really going, right? So those penalties really took you out of the ability to just stay ahead of the sticks and then take your shots because you're ahead of the sticks and can afford to. When you get into 1st and 17 and 1st and 20 and things like that multiple times, you're going to get off the field really fast. Your defense may get a little tired. And those are just the things that I thought killed them, really, penalties and turnovers. And some of those are within your control a little bit too. So I think you could only be encouraged. Obviously, you would like to have won the game, but we've seen some really discouraging openers, even with wins. Like Citadel, I remember the Citadel game, and I'm like, nobody can get open against Citadel. Like they won 27-6, but there was nobody open at all. So I was like, that's not great. I feel a lot better after this first game this year. So I think there's some things they can do. And then now it's about 2 weeks in a row.
Exactly.
That's been the biggest issue. Last 3, they'll play great one week, and then the next week, what happens?
Exactly. If you had told me that USF would outgain Western by almost 100 yards, I would have been like, all right, that's a dub. Like you don't really do that. Like this Western team is built to put up points, put up yards. And it didn't translate. Those turnovers came at crucial times. You score an opening drive touchdown, you force them to punt. And I mean, it was the defense's first shot on the field for the 2023 season, and they showed up. You force a punt, and then 2 plays later, just Byron Brown just does not see kind of the linebacker safety kind of lurking in the middle there, and just he's able to drive down on the ball and for an easy interception. That one was a killer. Obviously, the one in the fourth quarter when they're trailing 31-24, they drove down the field. Couple of defensive penalties put them inside the 4-yard line, stares down the receiver, picked off, and then that was kind of it. And then obviously the strip sack, scoop and score, that really puts the game out of reach. But Golesh said it during his press conference on Tuesday that the interception at the goal line was the one that basically put the final nail in the coffin. And but Byram's still technically he's a redshirt freshman. 5 career games. This was his 3rd start. For everything else that went wrong, he did pretty well. 25 carries, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's pretty impressive from that guy. And he's a big dude, and he can make guys miss, and he doesn't mind contact. So I'm excited to see what he does going forward. Make sure he stays healthy. The only gripe that I have with the first half, I believe it was the first half. It was that 4th and 1 pitch where they went hurry up and went under center, and there was the 4th and 1 pitch. It was the only time that they got stopped on 4th down. I thought that was super frustrating, but you try to catch them off guard. I'm okay with everything else. And
they ran it earlier in the game and converted on it and turned it into like a 4 or 5 yard run. It was kind of similar where it looked a little bit stacked up, but they ran it to the opposite side earlier in the game and were able to convert. So it must be just when you go really fast, you can only have you may have only so many things in for like a game plan for the week, like 4th and short calls. So That's obviously when they liked, or maybe they'd already cycled back through. They just flipped it to the boundary. But yeah, that one, and this will be on the film room. That was one that if you got the block, you would have had the play. You just missed the corner, and he was able to come in and make the play.
And talking about actually getting the block and just not reading the block correctly. I believe it was in the first quarter, early in the first half.
14-7. You're up 14-7
driving, and I think that drive stalls out, and they kick the field goal. They got 17-7.
Yeah, that was a 3rd down. They kicked the field goal the next play instead of going for
it. Mikey Dukes has the outside block, and he's gone for a touchdown if he cuts it inside. Like, it's there. It's not, I saw it in the moment, and I screamed at the TV, like, what are you doing? And it was like one of those things, and I'm sure he saw it on the game film on Sunday when they watched it back, and I'm sure he's heard about it since then. But golly, that's different, man. That's 21-7. That's different than 17-7 for sure.
Yeah, it changes things a little bit.
But so someone in the Ponderosa kind of asked us about snap counts and things like that. We thought with our newfound endeavor, we want to give you guys the best assets and everything. So I want to dive a little bit into it. You guys will get the more in-depth stuff in the Ponderosa. Subscribe to the Patreon and become a patron. You can, as low as $5 a month, will get you access to a bunch of great stuff. But I thought the snap counts were pretty interesting, especially on defense. They rotated a bunch of guys, and some certainly that I did not expect to see the amount of playing time that they received. Hello, Michael Williams.
I was just kind of, I think they played 10 defensive linemen, 10 plus plays.
That's remarkable.
That's good, right?
13 so they played 10 defensive linemen, 13 or more plays. Yeah, Michael Williams played 22 plays, which is the same as Jason Vaughn, who played a ton last year. Some thought he was going to be a starter this year. Interestingly enough, like we thought D-line you didn't have a ton of depth, so maybe you wouldn't play a lot of guys. They basically played the same two linebackers just about the entire game. Yeah, and that's a position where you're like, they got some depth at linebacker. I mean, I picked Jamie Petway. He all he does is play special teams now, apparently. But Schuler played 69 snaps. Gordon played 63 snaps. And then you had Mataafa play 16. He was the next kind of linebacker. And Mac Harris was the only other one that played. It's 7 snaps. So that was interesting. And then, played a ton of corners. Now, some of that was you had a couple guys play more than others, but Amaris Brown played a ton. He got cramped up, had to go out, so he had some other guys get in. But yeah, they played a ton of dudes on defense. Let me count how many. You guys vamp, and I'll count how many guys had at least 9+ snaps.
Yeah,
can I talk about those pleasant surprise? Oh, go on. You're going to say the same thing, probably.
No, you go.
Hold on. On the same count of 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. No, I think the most pleasant surprise of all, Logan Berryhill, man, he played fantastic. I mean, right from the get-go. I mean, they asked a lot out of him, it looked like, and boy howdy, he delivered pretty much the entire time during the game. He had a couple of big hits, a lot of passes defended. That's a guy who, originally came to USF as a wide receiver. It's 6'3", 6'4". Never saw the field of receiver, bounced between receiver and safety over the last 3 seasons, and finally seeing him on the field and finally seeing him validated was so nice. I was like, I saw 37. I thought it was a typo. I was like, there's no way they're playing Logan Berry. They're starting Logan Berryhill. He's matching up against Malachi Corley. They're really utilizing him.
It was one of those things, because they talked about him in the spring, like, hey, he's really coming along. Talked about him in fall camp, and it's like one of those guys that actually kind of translates the spring and fall camp hype into actually performing pretty well on the field. I'm really excited for him. Jalen Stokes also did phenomenal, and probably his most extensive playing time of his career. I think that's the most exciting thing about this defense. Bye guys, love you. Time for bed for the kids. The guy, we were definitely worried about the secondary, and there were some hiccups. Tavon Ward had the touchdown against them, things like that, but not the worst. I feel a lot better after game 1 against this kind of offense where they'll spread you out. Granted, Malachi Corley got hurt, so a little bit different, but there's still a lot of talent on that Western team. So I'm excited where the defense can be. They just need to create some more pressure and get a couple turnovers.
Yeah, so just counting up real quick, they had 24 guys play at least 9 snaps on defense. 23 played double digits. That's a lot of dudes. And then Stokes and Berryhill were the top 2 at safety. So those are kind of and the next guy. So Berryhill played 55. Next was Chris Towns at 20. One thing that was super interesting to me, and we put some of these numbers and some other interesting numbers in a piece for the Patreon, written piece on the Ponderosa for everybody, $5 and up. And then we're going to go talk in more detail for the $10 and up tier in the extra podcast this week as we preview FAMU. So one thing we said last week, the depth chart came out, and some people are like, oh, they're going to run a 3-4. and we said they are not running the 3-4 against Western Kentucky. Like, I don't care what this depth chart says, they're not running that, right? We talked about, I think you asked Golesh about tight front. They ran a decent bit of tight front. They ran basically a 3-2-6 to start the game. So your starters were Tremel Logan and Lloyd Summerall as like your ends in the 3-man line. Doug Blue Eli as the nose. Then Schuler, Gordon. And then you played 3 safeties and 3 corners. Clark, Brown, and Daquan Evans, Jalen Stokes, Logan Berryhill, and Will Jones all played. So it was not the 3-4. It was 3-2-6. And we said that was what it was going to be last week because you cannot match up against Western with Andrew Mataafa covering Malachi Corley. Like, that's not going to work. So, yeah, you heard it here first.
Well, and if you're a Patreon subscriber of $25 more, you heard it here first. So the QB1 was going to be about 2 weeks before they even announced it.
Let's give Nathan a round of applause for that.
I mean, look at us.
So we talked about it on Twitter, but a little bit on the game day. And let me tell you, I trust Nathan, but as they were announcing the starter on the radio, my butthole was puckered. Because this is kind of like the first big thing for us out on our own. August 22nd, Nathan put on the Patreon, or we put on, but he reported that Byron Brown was going to be the starting quarterback for the Western Kentucky game. And this is while Bohannon was still practicing. Like, he was still at practice. It wasn't like, Archie was the second guy, and like he was there practicing. But Nate called a shot. I think he even said like 3 days before on the preview that you thought it was going to be Byram, and then you went to practice and kind of confirmed it. But nobody else had that. And we had it August 22nd, courtesy of Mr. Nathan Bond. So very good.
This is why you guys should join the Patreon if you haven't already.
And if you're a $25 tier member, Nathan told you on the 22nd. So you've known for 2.5 weeks.
I mean, I'll be honest, like the grades for PFF, I'm iffy on, but like the inside stuff, it's gonna be worth your $5 a month, folks. I mean, it's worth it. Even for basically $60 for the year, you're getting what we're giving you. Like by yourself, it's like $100.
Yeah, so we're gonna sift through. Yeah, we're gonna do a weekly like data dump kind of. Some of it'll be snap count stuff. Some of it'll be advanced stat stuff as we start to kind of find our sources and aggregate things. But we've got some really good data to share. We shared a little bit in written posts, and we'll talk about it again later. But for $5 a month, you'll get the written thing every week, and that'll be pretty good. And then once we get going a little bit, we'll be able to understand who's going to redshirt probably pretty quick, and we'll kind of have a redshirt tracker and all that stuff going. But it was interesting stuff for this first game.
I agree. The splits at running back were also kind of interesting. Naquan Wright got a good chunk of it, and he was pretty effective rushing the ball. I believe he led the running back room in snaps. Yeah, he had 58 snaps.
Yeah, he had more than the other two combined.
It seems like we expect he was going to be the starter for this team, and it bore out. He was really impressive on that very opening drive. A couple of great runs. I think his pass pro was decent. I think that they're still looking to figure out who's going to be the guy pass pro. It's they cycle like the defense. They cycled out like hockey lines. Their defensive line. They're kind of doing that. Every other possession for running backs and things like that. So I think I would assume probably by Rice we'll kind of figure out how they're going to utilize these guys. And, all right, Wright takes the first 2 possessions and then you throw in Kelly Joyner or, you throw in K1 Powell, things like that. Mikey Dukes gets a series just because of how fast they go. I think Golesh has even said it. It's pretty tough to keep those guys out there for the 102 snaps or whatever with no rest. So that's going to be an interesting thing kind of going forward to take a look at.
Yeah, and the Kelly Joyner of it all is interesting to me. 40. He played 45 snaps the other night. I don't know if he played any at running back, and so he didn't. I don't think he had any actual touches. So that's one thing that I think like you've got to figure out how to get him touches. He's one of your more explosive players. And if you're not going to play him at running back if you need him at receiver, then you got to generate. Now they tried with some screens and things like that just didn't hit. But they've got to figure out a way to get him the ball a little bit more. Interesting on the running back room. I think Dukes came in second, but Powell ended up with more plays on the night, which I thought was interesting. Mm-hmm. And I tell you what, like the way he runs, he's like downhill 100 miles an hour. And once you get these teams a little tired, he came in that last drive where they threw the pick in the end zone. Powell basically just was like hitting the hole 1,000 miles an hour, and these tired dudes are trying to tackle him. And he was just picking up chunks of yards, and they move the ball down the field, and then they throw the pick in the end zone. But I thought, like, as a human battering ram coming in there late when people are tired, it's interesting, like a mix of style. A guy like him that runs really hard, I think will kind of be really interesting change up and wear on people. Or the other guys are a little bit shiftier and maybe not quite as right down your throat.
Yeah, and a couple of things kind of jump out, at least from the wide receiver spot. Naeem Simmons plays 82 snaps. Sean Atkins, 63. Joffrey Brown, 72. Jaden Alexis, basically the first guy off the bench almost, 45 snaps. And then Christian Elms gets 4 snaps. Of the transfers, only Jaden Alexis and Naeem Simmons actually see the field. Kind of reported 2.5 weeks ago, Michael Brown-Stevens had a kind of a wrap on his knee, and he was kind of nursing some things. I did see him at practice a couple days later, so it was interesting to kind of see that, but didn't play. Obviously, Seth Jones is still working back from his injury. The depth of wide receiver didn't really show up that I was kind of hoping for. I know they played, 3 different tight ends as well. So I guess they lined Jason Littlejohn up as he's listed as a fullback on PFF, but we kind of know.
They used him in some like 2 tight end stuff a few times. He was kind of the off tight end, I think. But yeah, Weston Wolf ended up getting the most snaps. I thought no Yusuf Terry was kind of interesting. He had a pretty good spring, and I got hurt a little bit, but he didn't see any time. And Naeem Simmons, I don't think ended up with a ton of production, but he saw the most snaps. And then Joffrey Brown made the big play. My guy Joffrey, I think he fits, man. And you see why he can go and get it vertically. So he's going to be a big weapon in the offense, I think. And you got to see that a little bit.
One tidbit about that play. So I mean, it was an absolute dime from Byron Brown to Joffrey Brown on for that 84-yard touchdown. 10 yards or more down the field, Byron Brown was 1 for 12 on Saturday. That's going to have to improve for this offense to see any success. They're going to, I think, you'll see, FAMU, Alabama, Rice, Navy, they're going to do their best to stack the box especially after this week when you run for 360 plus yards. Yeah, they're going to stack the box after seeing that. Byron's got to be a lot better than 1 for 12 on 10 yards down the field and more. That's kind of the one kind of inside stuff, things that kind of popped out at me looking at the PFF stuff. Yeah,
and I think that's I posted in the just outside the game. I posted in the game thread, but also in the general USF football section in the Discord just right after the game. But this isn't like crazy unprecedented in terms of being able to run the ball really well early and the passing game taking a little bit of time. Tennessee's first game, they played Bowling Green, I believe. Golesh's first game at Tennessee. Golesh and Heupel, their first game at Tennessee. Tennessee ran for 300 plus yards, and they finished like 12 of 24 passing. Does that sound familiar? Right? Like it's kind of it takes time because not only does the quarterback have to understand, the receivers have to understand. There may have been times where Byram's thinking the guy's going to break here and he doesn't, so he looks like he's holding the ball really long when maybe it was a receiver's fault. And it's hard to know that without being in the building. But I think, the concerns about the passing game, and we'll lay out some more advanced stuff, I think they can be fixed. So I'm not super worried about it yet. I think that's something those guys can figure out, and will come with a little more experience from all the guys in the offense.
Where was Manny Hickman?
Yeah, no play.
So it's interesting. Like,
I think there are a few. There seems like there's a few undisclosed injuries, possibly.
It definitely seems like that. Ben Knox not being listed as the starter and he, I guess, pregame was announced got a knee injury. I don't think we got an update on that with Golesh, so we'll have to figure out what's going on with him there. Because it seemed like by all accounts he was having a good camp as well. And then I think that the thing that kind of tipped off that maybe Manny Hickman either didn't travel or was not healthy was Jaquez Williams and Dewan Cease getting 27 combined snaps.
Yeah.
I think those snaps probably should have gone to him. That is probably the
We did have somebody in the game thread say, "Did I just see Hickman in street clothes?" I remember seeing that during the game. So he may have traveled, but not been healthy or not been able to play. So something to keep an eye on going forward as we dig deeper into FAMU stuff. Do we want to discuss it, or do we want to do like what's? I saw one thing that kind of popped out. Bill Connolly's SP Plus has FAMU beating USF, and the win expectancy being about 60% for a 27-23 FAMU win. SP Plus does factor heavily the prior season in the first few weeks of the year. I don't know if you guys recall, but USF lost 11 straight last year, and now we're at 12 straight. If my math is correct.
And Florida A&M has won 10 straight games in the national championship, so tracks.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I hope a line comes out that's close. I'm really interested. They usually don't release these FCS lines till later in the week, but I'm interested to see what this line is, because I don't think it's going to be a close game, but that's just me.
Our friend Colin is in Vegas, so if we get that line out before he leaves, I may stake some money on it if FAMU's favored.
We're putting a lot of Patreon subs. We're gonna put
we're gonna put the entire month of August on USF if they are the underdog.
Yeah, FAMU's favored. We're putting all the Patreon money on. That's what it's for, right there, just to fuel some irresponsible betting.
I'm pretty sure that's what it's there for.
Yes, it's there for if USF is ever an underdog to an FCS team. That's a clause. That's in the spine print down there.
Yeah, for sure. I think we'll kind of dig deeper into FAMU later on in the week. As I don't know if you guys can hear Brody going absolutely nuts right now in the background. Yeah. Is there any final thing, and it seems silly to kind of pick the game when there's no line. I guess we pick even picking it straight up kind of is pointless. But is there any final thing that you guys want from Western to kind of get off your chest as we turn the page to FAMU?
I think the big thing for me was the preparation going into the week. How they prepared the first drive that they chose, the plays that happened there, the first defensive set, honestly, the first half from the defense, I think was spectacular. That's why I feel very confident about the direction that Golesh is going to take USF in the future. I think that's something to hang his hat on. Yes, they didn't win. His post-game comments kind of said it the most, and his comments today also said, hey, there's really silver lining with the game. We can talk about how well he played, but that's what matters at the end. And that's the easy thing to say, really. But the preparation, having everyone prepared, having all the guys flying around, I think is a consolation of the effort that they put into these and their work ethic. Yes, the analytics seeing too close to the sun here with the Florida A&M USF game. I'm not putting anything on analytics for this game. I think this is a game you have to go on the vibes and I think the Vibes are telling a better story if you watched both of the previous games, both these teams.
Yeah, I mean, I thought USF looked prepared, right? There was maybe that's a big difference from previous years, but they looked prepared on both sides of the ball. They played hard. They just made some mistakes, and you had some young guys make young guy mistakes that are tough to overcome when you're playing a team that's probably a little bit better than you, or even if you consider it an even match, it's hard to overcome those mistakes when the other team doesn't make them. So I was encouraged, but that right, it's got to now just do it again. Right, I think that's the biggest thing. Can you do it again? Because this team has not shown the ability to do it again the last 3 or 4 years. So,
and with that, we'll sign off here, and we'll follow back up with you guys as we gear up toward Saturday at 7 p.m. I think it's ESPN Plus. So, question for you guys. I wasn't sure. I was at Samantha's parents' house, so it's like the ESPN Plus app doesn't really work when I'm using like a different Spectrum internet. Were all of the games blacked out for you guys because of the Disney Spectrum stuff? Like if you tried to like use the app?
I think if you, yeah, I'm a YouTube TV guy, but I think if it's like a game that's on ESPN and it's like a watch ESPN game, I think they're blacked out. Because my dad was trying to watch the Florida game and it cut out right at kickoff, and he had no way to get it on for like 15 minutes. So he was trying to figure it out. But and he's like, I tried to watch it on the thing, but I think it's an ESPN Plus game. That's a separate service outside of your cable. So I think if it's on ESPN Plus and you have it, you should be good regardless of your cable subscription. You may want to test that out with another game before, just in case. But I think that's how it goes.
Yeah, hopefully that gets resolved soon because it would be unfortunate. I think Alabama's. Oh, is it the Alabama game on CBS or ABC?
ESPN, I think.
Oh God. Okay, yeah, we got to figure. They need to come together and figure this out. Just for our purposes.
I saw somewhere Comcast said if they don't get a better price, they'll just stop with cable. They'll just stop doing cable altogether. Or Charter said that, I guess. They'll stop doing cable. Okay.
Say less. All right. Well, with that, appreciate you guys tuning in. Stay safe. Have fun. Go Bulls.
Go Bulls.
Go Bulls.